the Forms 34A were still physically delivered to the CTC in accordance with the law. They also maintained that the system was not compromised and the results were not in any way manipulated. In conclusion, the respondents urged that the flaws in election transmission of results, if any, cannot be the basis of voiding a presidential election with such a large margin of difference of numbers between the two leading contestants. Counsel for the respondents, the second interested party, as well as the first amicus curiae, the Attorney General, submitted that in an election petition, the paramount consideration is to ensure that the will of the majority of the voters carry the day. In their view, flaws in election results transmission cannot be the basis of avoiding a presidential election with such a large margin in votes as the one in this case. On our part, having considered the opposing positions, we are of the view that the contentions by the first and second respondents ignore two important factors. One, that elections are not only about numbers, as many, surprisingly, even prominent lawyers would like the country to believe. Even in numbers, we used to be taught in school to arrive at a mathematical solution. There is always a computational path one has to take, as proof that the process indeed gives rise to the stated solution. Elections are not events, but processes. As Likot JF opines, quote, elections are not isolated events, but are part of a holistic process of democratic transition and good governance, unquote. Incidentally, IEBC's own election manual, what they call the source book, recognizes that an election is indeed a process. There are many other authorities which speak to this proposition. In Kanyalal, Omar versus Trivedi and others, and the Union of India versus Association for Democratic Reforms and another, the Supreme Court of India, for example, stated that the word election is used in a wide sense to include the entire process of election, which consists of several stages, and it embraces many steps, some of which may have an important bearing of the result of the process. These stages include voter registration, political party and candidate registration, the allocation of state resources and access to media, campaign activities and the vote, the count, tabulation, and the declaration of results. Lady Justice Georgina Wood, the former Chief Justice of Ghana, made the same point and added over stages where she stated, and I quote, the election process is not confined to the casting of votes on an election day and the subsequent declaration of election results thereafter. There are a series of other processes, such as the demarcation of the country into constituencies, registration of qualified voters, the registration of political parties, the organization of the whole polling system to manage and conduct the elections, ending up with the declaration of the results and so on, unquote. According to the European Human Rights Committee, The process also includes the right to challenge the election results in a court of law or other tribunal. Here in Kenya, the issue of elections as a process was discussed in the case of Karanja Kabage versus Joseph Kiuna Kariambegu Nganga and two others, where the High Court had the following to say, and I quote, "An election is an elaborate process that begins with the registration of voters, nomination of candidates to the actual electoral offices, voting or counting and tallying of those votes, and finally, the declaration of the winner by gazettement. In determining the question of the validity of the election of a candidate, the court is bound to examine the entire process up to the declaration of results. The concept of free and fair elections is expressed not only on the voting day, but throughout the election process. Any non-compliance with the law regulating these processes would affect the validity of the election of the member of parliament," unquote. This case was cited with approval by this court in the matter of the gender representation in the National Assembly and the Senate. Therefore, the process of getting a voter to freely cast a vote, and more importantly, to have that vote count on an equal basis with those of other voters, is as important as the result of the election itself. It is also a fact of common notoriety that there were serious protests following the declaration of the 2007 presidential election results. The violence arising from those protests not only claimed over 1,000 lives and led to the destruction of and the looting of property worth hundreds of millions of shillings, but also drove the entire country to the precipice of destruction. It is also common knowledge that following that violence, the government formed the Independent Review Commission, commonly known as the Kriegler Commission, to inquire into the conduct of the 2007 elections and the cause of that violence. One of the critical areas of that commission's focus was the integrity of the vote counting, the tallying, and the announcement of presidential election results. Here we will let the Kriegler report speak for itself in the following words. I quote, "The accessibility of an election depends very considerably on the extent to which the public feel that the officially announced election results accurately reflect the votes cast for candidates and the parties. It depends, too, on factors such as the character of the electoral campaign and the quality of the voter register, but reliable counting and tallying in a sine qua non if an election is to be considered legitimate by its key assessors, the voters, the system of tallying, recording, transcribing, transmitting, and accounting and announcing results was so conceptually defective and executed, counting, tallying during the 27th to 30th December 2007, and even hereafter, and the announcement of the individual results were so confused and so confusing that many Kenyans lost whatever confidence they might have had in the results as announced. While integrity is necessary at all stages in the electoral process, nowhere is it more important than in counting and tallying." Unquote. Among the significant recommendations the Kriegler Commission made related to the use of technology in the electoral process, it recommended as follows, quote, without delay, the Electoral Commission of Kenya, ECK, starts developing an integrated and secure tallying and data transmission system which would allow computerized data entry and tallying at the constituencies, secure simultaneous transmission of individual polling station level data to the National Tallying Center, and the integration of this results handling system in a progressive election result announcement system, unquote. Pursuant to these recommendations, the process of integrating technology into the conduct of elections was undertaken, starting with the use of biometric voter registration, equipment to register votes on a pilot basis in the run-up to the 2010 referendum. In the 2013 election technology, in the 2013 elections, technology was applied for registration of votes, voter registration, and for result transmission. However, that did not work very well in the 2013 general election, and it was one of the key issues that was raised in the 2013 presidential petition before this court. Consequently, in 2016, the Joint Parliamentary Select Committee on Matters Relating to the Bipartisan Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission was formed, discussed the use of technology in elections, and made far-reaching recommendations which led to, among others, extensive amendments to the Elections Act to provide for use of technology and also technology-dedicated regulations, the Elections Technology Regulations 2017. These changes, in our view, were meant to realign several pieces of election-related legislation with the principles of the Constitution and the electoral jurisprudence that had been developed by the courts. The cumulative effect of the changes was the establishment of what is now referred to as the Kenya Integrated Election Management System, the KIEMS. Henceforth, technology would be deployed to the process of voter registration, voter identification, and the transmission of results to the constituency and to the National Tallying Center. Towards this end, Parliament enacted Section 44 of the Elections Act, subsection 1 of which provides as follows: there is established an integrated electronic electoral system that enables biometric voter registration, electronic voter identification, and electronic transmission of results. Subsection 3 thereof provides as follows: the Commission shall ensure that the technology in use under subsection 1 is simple, accurate, verifiable, secure, accountable, and transparent. Section 39(1)(c) of the Elections Act then squarely addresses the results transmission aspect of these changes in the law, and it provides as follows: for purposes of a presidential election, the Commission shall, A, electronically transmit in the prescribed form the tabulated results of an election for the president from a polling station to the constituency tallying center and to the National Tallying Center. B, tally and verify the results received at the National Tallying Center. And C, publish the polling result forms on an online public portal maintained by the Commission. Regarding the voter register, this court in the 2013 Raila Odinga decision had observed that there was no single voter register, but an aggregation of several parts into one register. To cure this anomaly, Parliament amended Section 4 of the Election Act to provide, as I read, there shall be a register to be known as the Register of Voters, which shall comprise a polling register in respect of every